Hi, everybody. I am Debbie Davis, and I'm an alcoholic. I live a little ways from Oakland. I live in Concord, California, which is in the greater East Bay of San Francisco. And I want to thank Gordy and the committee and anybody else involved in inviting me here. I don't know if you know that to get from Bellingham Airport to here, you have to go through Canada and make a U-turn or not. But that's what we did. So I got the scenic route back to La Conner. And I want to thank James for his excellent driving. And Siri, or whatever she is. Thank you, Stacy, for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. You know, it's always fun to listen to other people, and even though I know you were the Al-Anon speaker, there was a lot of your history in there, of course, that got you to Alcoholics Anonymous. And your background and my background couldn't be more different. And yet, here we are. Here we are in the same, we're in recovery, we're living a way of life that's free. And I want to welcome everybody who's in their first months and year of sobriety. I want to welcome you to a way of life. Because I used to think it was you just put the plug in the jug, and then you go to some of those meetings, and there you go. You're all done. And I couldn't have been more mistaken. I didn't realize it was a way of life. And so I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous through a treatment program in a little town called Grand Forks, North Dakota. And I'm in there for, I know it's a mistake, actually. I know they've made a grave mistake because they say I'm in here for alcoholism and drug addiction. And no, I know what an alcoholic looks like. They're old men in a trench coat. And I'm not old, I'm not a man, and I don't own a trench coat, so I can't possibly qualify in that regard. And I would hear when we read how it works that our adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. And what I would realize what I was doing, because I don't want to quit drinking and have no intention of quitting drinking. I'm not here because I want help. I'm here because I'm court-ordered to be here. This is not voluntary commitment. This is duress. And so I would compare my adventures to your adventures. I didn't realize what alcoholism was, that it was an illness comprised of 2 components: the mental obsession and the phenomenon of craving. I had no idea until I would be sober a while what that really meant to me and what those symptoms were, because I just complained I'm too young to be an alcoholic. I didn't do all that you did, because I can tell you my drinking story in all the differences I found between me and you. I would hear you say things like, I drank for 40 years. And I thought, I got 35 more to go. That's great. I got some time. No need to rush in here. I drank 7/5 of whiskey a day. And I thought, I love whiskey. That's a goal, right? I heard you say, I lost my family because of drinking. And some do. Some families might come back, some might never. And many of you that lost your family thought that was a bad deal. I'm like, score. I want to lose my family. They're a constant source of irritation, always yakking about my drinking. And I thought that was a good deal to get rid of them. And yet down here in where the mustard seed of identification began in my gut, I knew I had been asked to leave their home because of my drinking. Most of these realizations came about 3-4 months into this non-drinking period of time. And I even knew at the end my mood swings. When I read about the Jekyll and Hyde in our book, I really related to that. Even I knew of my own mood swings. I had the non-drinking mood and I had the drinking mood. The non-drinking was very dark, very homicidal. I never thought about suicide. I always thought about homicide. There's some people who should go. And then I would have a few drinks and everybody lives, you know? It's like I'm good with everything and everybody, it's all good. And so I even knew that pendulum swing. You talked about drunk driving charges. And I would think, my God, many of you should not do that. You're not very good at it, you know? And I could say I never had any drunk driving charges because when I would get stopped for drunk driving underage, I had a little get out of trouble card called I work for the city judge. This is helpful, let me tell you. They would take my booze, I knew them, they knew me, they'd take away the booze, tell me to go home, and sometimes I would. But most of the time I would just go somewhere, scurry around somewhere else and finish off the drunk. Because I don't know if you've ever tried or been enforced to stop abruptly, but it's a bad, bad night. It's bad. I did not understand the phenomenon of craving, that this is what was going on. I always thought I chose to get drunk, which I did. When I started to drink, it wasn't to be social. I've had one social drink in my life, and that was my very first one. And so I drank with the intention of getting drunk. I have a girlfriend who's still alive today. There was 4 of us that ran around together. 3 of us are alcoholics. One has died from alcoholism. She went back out, and it took 10 years. I don't even know how she lasted 10 years. And she died from alcoholism. And the other one, Sandy, and I actually have the same sponsor. She's 30 years sober now. And there was 4 of us that ran around, and one of them, Karen, was the non-alcoholic. She always made sure we got home and all those kinds of nice things. But Karen would say things like, hey, do you want to go out for a beer? She really meant one. She really meant that when she said a beer meant one beer. And for you and I, people like us, that's code. That's code for let's go get rip-roaring, snot-slinging, can't get off the floor drunk, right? That's what that means, but she really meant one. And again, I don't know about my illness. I don't have the language to explain it to myself, but I knew that if I could not leave her and then finish the drunk, I would actually say no. I knew it was like so disruptive in my world to start and abruptly stop, and I didn't understand that allergy in me. And so I never had any drunk driving charges. And then I heard you talk about totaling out cars. And I said, nope, I have never totaled out a car officially. Now, every one of my cars you could drive away from the incident, so that doesn't count. But I had a little drunk car that arrived to AA, the kind, you buy them rectangular, right? And then, I know you get this, things just jump out in front of you. They just appear out of nowhere, those cars and those trees and those poles and those mailboxes, they just appear. And so my car has now become an oval, basically. And things are missing and broken, and my driver's window had been shot out. You'd think I'd know when that happened. I have no clue. And my gas cap is a mitten I've got stuck in there. I've lost that somewhere along the way, but I'm resourceful, you know? Mittens work. I'm like driving a Molotov cocktail around, basically, you know? And that kind of stuff, people point that out, and you just, stuff happens. It just gets no blip on the radar at all. And you talked about losing jobs. Okay, well, that happens. Yes, I had, now keep in mind, none of my jobs were ever career starters. They were drinking money producers. That was all. It wasn't, I'll start in the mailroom and become the CEO in 20 years. No, that wasn't the plan. I was fired from jobs. I did quit before I was fired. But I had acquired, especially the last year, a little bad habit, and I would quit in a blackout, but I'd go to work the next day. I don't know I quit, right? You know, that's the problem with blackouts. And so you show up and everybody's surprised and you don't know why, and then they explain it. It's just awkward, you know. You just can't talk your way out of those kinds of things very easily. So, because I had intended to be a drug dealer. I have no ambition, but I had a moment. And I said, I'm going to be a drug dealer and make a lot of money. Now, I know I'm so typecast as a drug dealer, right? I mean, I'd be like, but the problem is I was my only customer. And you will not make money that way, just so you know. So I had to have these real jobs. And then I heard the women talk about their years of prostitution, and I thought, you can get paid for that? You know, I could have had a little side job going on there, right? So these are the kinds of things that, in my mind, my case is different. I don't relate, I don't identify. But in my own small mustard seed way, I began to identify. And I harped, I'm too young to be an alcoholic. I didn't do all the things you did. And I compared my adventures to yours. And I certainly wasn't that bad as you. But you see, again, I didn't know what alcoholism was. And when I took my first drink, I was 12 years old. And I took the first drink to be socially accepted, and the second one was on a new path. I don't know what the first thing I drank was. I didn't know I should remember. And it was a brown paper bag going around. It could have been kerosene for all I know, and I would have drank it. But it was some kind of booze. I took a pull off of that bottle, and I gave it to the next guy. That's what we were doing. And it immediately just ripped out my throat. And I just, oh my God, you know, kind of inside, but outside I'm looking very cool and controlled. And it just totally destroyed my throat. But there's this little voice that came up from the back that said, don't worry about that. You can always get another throat, you know? I'm like, okay. And when it went down and it hit my gut, the fireworks didn't go off, but my shoulders relaxed. I had been obsessed all week to take that first drink. The mental obsession happened before I even picked it up. And I couldn't wait. I don't know, you know, like I said, I'm 12 years old. There's warm glows behind my belly button. And I thought, you know, oatmeal has never done this for me. And I don't know what's in there, but I want some more. And I had always intended to get drunk that night, not just to have that one and only social drink. It was to get drunk. And I knew I was going to have a second. So when it came back the second time, glug, glug, a little bit more, pass it on. And now we talk about this invisible line of going from social to alcoholic drinking. Well, I just pole vaulted over that thing. And I went from drink number 1, please accept me, to drink number 2, aren't you glad I'm here? You know, I no longer needed their approval. I am good right here. And I would have my first blackout, my first pass out, my first case of the dry heaves. I would drink as much as I could, as whatever I could, with whomever. And when I came to with the dry heaves, of course, like many of you, I couldn't wait to do this again. I know I had a good time. Whatever I did, it was a good time. And I thought, okay, this is the drinking package, check. So it was hard for me to see my progression. But so when I would start to look back, about a year later, I'm 13, I'm drinking whiskey out of a bottle with a beer chaser, and I'm blacking out too quickly. And so I added some accelerants. I added speed and acid, and boy, I'll tell you, that combo will get you there quicker and in color. And put me down for that combination. I'm all about that. And then the next progress seemed to be when I was about 16, and I started doing that something in the morning. It could have been in any form or substance, but it was just to get that little bump, get your heart going, get yourself moving again. And I don't ever remember saying to these other two girlfriends, do you have a beer on the way to school? And I don't ever remember asking them that. Maybe I didn't want to know. It was just this natural transition. And those are the only two progressive lines from the first night I drank that I could see. But my father had tried all things. So when I hear how it works and the B of how it works, that no human power could have relieved our alcoholism, I always think of him. Because he had tried all the manipulation and the threats and the groundings and the take your car away and give your car back and do everything he could. And he finally went to a professional with his problem, which was me. And while he didn't know what he was dealing with, because we've shook that tree. The closest we came to alcoholism in the family was a suspect uncle. No confirmation, just suspicion. And so he didn't know what to do about this. He knew I obviously had some kind of problem. Those other kids, I got in with the wrong crowd, right? No, I was the wrong crowd, how that really worked. And so this professional knew what he was dealing with. And I remember going to this guy. It was like one of those, okay, I'll go, I'll make you happy, I'll go. And I don't know if any of you ever saw this thing they called the Valley chart. And it would start up here with, like innocent drinking kind of thing, and it would go down, 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 down. Down at the bottom was like death or insanity or recovery, and that's when you started going back up. And I looked at this Valley chart and I thought, I'm only about halfway down that chart. I got a ways to go. It wasn't, why don't you stop while you're ahead of before you hit the, no, I got a ways to go. Why stop so early? And it wasn't too much longer that he would have me court committed to this treatment program. So I'm in there, I'm learning. I leave there 7 weeks later, and I've got a big book, a 12 and 12 in information. But I have no commitment. I heard you guys talk about the gift of desperation, surrender, give up, all those kinds of things. I knew intellectually what you meant, but I also knew I had not felt, thought, or experienced that. That I did know. And so I knew one day I would drink again. I was sent to an all-women's halfway house, and while there, I did the bare minimum I needed to stay there, which was don't drink, makes sense. I mean, people are trying to put their life together, and go to one Alcoholics Anonymous meeting a month. So when you're not working, you can kind of fit that in, So I would go to my one AA meeting a month. But the way I went to meetings is I walked in when it started, and I left as soon as it was over, got her done, check it off. And if you would have said to me over the next 7 months, do you go to AA? Yeah. I mean, I might as well have been sitting in the parking lot. I wasn't there to make connections, get phone numbers, be a part of. because they would tell me how many people I hurt when you drink. Well, then back off. Then stay away, because I will drink again. I know that. I'm not going to tell you that, but I know that I will. I'm just checking off what I have to do. And 7 months later, I went to visit my mother, who was living in San Jose, California at the time. And I was there 2.5 weeks. The first week I hung out with the people I used to drink with. The last week and a half, drunk and loaded with them, no surprise. Not even to me. Because you see, I had done nothing to create a relationship with that higher power that's going to come between me and the first drink. If you'd have said to me, have you got a big book? Yeah, I got one around here somewhere. My big book was so unused, you could have resold it for new, okay? Do you have a sponsor? Oh, I don't know. I don't need somebody telling me what to do. I've never had a sponsor tell me what to do. They have shared their experience and they've given me guidance, but nobody's ever done a wait, you better do, you ought to do, you have to. No. That would not work. I needed one, but I would have wasted their time. Do you have a home group? Oh, I'm not a joiner. No, not a joiner. No. So those were the things that was happening when I picked up that next drink. I, again, don't know what it was. Who cares? But what I remember was a couple of drinks, and then the next memory is a week and a half later on the flight home. I really, lie detector test could not have told you what happened during that time. And that got my attention, because I'd never had a week and a half mental absence. And I thought, whoa, you've learned your lesson. And that was all above the eyebrows. You see, alcoholism hasn't come down to my head or my heart. And so when I got back to Minneapolis, I ramped up my meetings from 1 a month to 1 a week. That sounded like a lot of meetings. But all I did was the same thing. Walk in when it started, left when it was over, got her done, signed the paper. And 5 weeks go by, and on a Friday, I get a letter in the mail from these friends in California. And it had one lousy joint in it. And I decided to keep it because I thought, you just never know when you might need this one day. Now keep in mind, I don't like pot. It is crap. Back in the day, it was just garbage. It was sticks and stems and seeds, and I didn't have anything Stacy was coming in with, That probably would have been worth it, but this was garbage, right? But you think it's so cool, because it's illegal and all that. And like you're getting away with something, and because it's so slow. I want to get downtown right now. That's why I liked whiskey. But pot is so slow, it takes forever to get from point A to get some buzz going, and you snack your way through that, It's just hideous. But I thought, you know what? Look, I am the innocent recipient. I didn't go looking for it. It came to me. And, you just never know. And I didn't know that I'd need it the next day, as it turned out, right? Timing is everything. And in a way, it really is. I had been thinking all night about that one stupid joint, and I'm plotting and planning and maneuvering and manipulating, and I got up that Saturday, and I had made the decision, I'm going to smoke this one stupid joint. But little did I know that would be the last thing I would take of my own hand to change the way that I felt and the way that I thought. I did not know that I would have my psychic change that day. I had no idea. And psychic change is, in the doctor's opinion, 3 times on this one page, depending on which edition you work out of. And a poor paraphrase of it, is the guy is just hopeless of ever, doing better, and he's an alcoholic. He's got problems galore up the gazoo, and something happens, and he now seems to be relieved of this obsession. Now, it doesn't describe what happened. Like you go here and you say a special prayer, or you go here and you buy some special vegetables, or you go here and you meditate a certain way. It doesn't give you any idea what happened. And that's exactly what happened to me. Before I lit that match, I had no intention at all of changing anything that I was doing. This is just going to be one more lie, one more secret, one more, it's none of your business. Yeah, that's right. And so I had no intention of, okay, God, making a deal. This is the last thing I'll ever do. And then I'll go join one of those home groups and do what, coffee or something that they do there. I'll go get a bunch of highlighters and color in my book like I've been reading it. I'll get one of those sponsor things and talk to them. There wasn't any deal making I was going to do. It was just, I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing, which was not much. And what happened is that the farther down that got, when it was finally over and I finally finished that joint, it was like this bomb went off inside of me. Kind of one of those like nuclear pictures we see. It goes boom, pew, and it just flattens everything in its wake. And what it flattened in my wake was all the excuses, all the yeah buts, the you don't understands, the I'm too youngs, you don't knows, blah, 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 all the excuses I'd been using. You never said to me, you're too young. You never said to me, you're not welcome here. You haven't drank enough. You haven't done what we did. You never said that to me. I said that to me to keep me apart from you. And that's on Saturday, and I knew that being loaded or altered in any way was really repulsive to me now. But those people in AA, they seemed to know what to do. And so the next day was Sunday, and I went to that was the weekly meeting night I went to. I mean, keeping in mind I'm in a metropolitan area where there's meetings all day long, every corner, every kind, whatever, hour of the day, location. But I went to the one meeting a week on that Sunday at 6 o'clock. And I decided to go early. I went 20 minutes early. I thought, my God, this is like going the day before. Who goes that early, right? Right, that was a very new action for me. And I began to have a different experience with Alcoholics Anonymous. I went that 20 minutes early and I heard the music of AA like I did when I came into the room tonight. The laughter and the chattering going on and the giggling and so forth. And you don't hear that when you walk in on time or late and leave right away. You don't hear that because everybody's sitting down and quiet and ready for whatever the message is. And then I started to feel the heartbeat of AA, that watching the handshakes and the pats on the back and the hugs. You don't see that when you walk in on time or late. If all I'm doing is that part, I am missing out on 2/3 of AA. And that's the front fellowship and the back fellowship. And I didn't know that because I've written the rules of how I'm going to do AA, which I'm basically lazy, and so I'm going to do the barest of bones minimum, and that's what it was. But I wasn't changing, and I wasn't even making myself available for any change. And so I went over to those long-timers, and I knew who they were, and I said, so, what do you do to stay sober? Because I don't know how to say, will you help me? Miss Know-It-All can't ask questions because she doesn't know anything. She doesn't know how to live. But clearly I'm not going to expose that, although you probably knew that already. And so I said, so what do you do to stay sober? And they're like, oh, she's asking a question. Okay, this is good. This is a good start. And they gave me what I call the formula for success. And they shared with me 7 things. And I know that we've been out of COVID now for a while, but a lot of people kind of got a little rusty and crusty and dusty during that time, and a lot of their actions sort of fell by the wayside. And it was easy to do when you're at home all the time, basically. But I tell you, I have to be lit up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I cannot be in the grayness. I can't, and I'm the one who will either light it up within or cause it to go gray. And I need to be fully alive in this program. And so they gave me these things. They said, well, one day at a time, we don't take the first drink. And I knew that meant all those other things. And we get a sobriety date. I thought, well, today's as good as any. And that was February the 8th, 1976, which means I've been with you for over 48 years. You know? It almost feels like I'm lying. You know, I'm not, because how do you be 48 years sober when you're only 39 years old? At some point, you get to a certain age and then you make a U-turn, you know? But I know this is an honest program. I am 39, just keep that in mind. And so I took that as my date. It's still my date because of the remaining things that they shared with me that I've taken the actions on. They said that we go to a lot of meetings and we get a home group. Well, I have lived in 4 different cities in the United States, or parts of the country, and therefore I've had 4 different home groups. And I feel so fortunate that I got dropped in. I wouldn't have known it at the time, but I got dropped into a 3 legacy group. What does that mean? That means that they had representation in general service and intergroup. They had that service structure in place. They were very active in sponsorship, our literature, service. That's what that means. And that just set the tone of what I needed to have. I could not do just a meeting where you show up, talk, and leave. I would have withered on that kind of a vine. And so I've had 4 different home groups because I've lived in 4 different parts of the U.S. And what I realized when I moved here 23 and a half years ago to the Bay Area is I've also had 4 different last names, but that's a kind of a side story, you know. Every city had their own last name. And so, but my home group, I am an active, invested member of that group. I am not a visitor, because there's 3 categories I've been: member, attender, and visitor. I've been all of those. Member is better. And I'm invested in that group. I go to the business meetings. I participate in the general service discussion, topics discussion. I always have a service commitment in my home group. They were clear in the beginning, that's not an option, even if you have to make one up, because you've been a taker long enough. You have to cross the line into giver. And if you don't have a commitment in your home group, then you are a taker. So they made that really clear for me. And then, so a home group, they said we get a sponsor. I've been blessed with the right sponsors for me. I had Marguerite in Minneapolis. I had Joe in Atlanta. I had Millie in Southern California. When I moved to Northern, I kept her. And we were together 33 years. That's a long time. And when she died, I waited 2 hours till a more appropriate morning time to call my current sponsor, Marilyn S., to ask her to set an appointment to talk to her about sponsorship. So we've been together for over 4 years now. And I believe strongly in sponsorship, that the river of recovery has to flow. And so what I pass on to the people I sponsor, they're expected to do the same thing. They can't be, AA bums. They can't be takers. I don't want to give to an empty well. You need to be passing that on if you want to keep living that glow in your life. You can't, and if sponsorship doesn't seem to be something that comes into your world much, then you need to find your AA service work. But you can't be a taker anymore. You have to find that way to give. So sponsorship, I believe very strongly. I'm what I call a 3 legacy sponsor. I take people through the steps and the traditions, and there is a 3rd legacy, the concepts. Maybe if I'm ever up here again, you'll have the concepts up here. Gordy, noted? You know, okay. I've sold a lot of concepts window shades because of that. He knows that. So because I believe that, we are a 3 legacy fellowship. And the gems and jewels of the other 2 legacies beyond the steps, while those are our foundation, are amazing. Just amazing what's in there. They said that we take the steps. And I use that verb specifically, because that's the language of chapter 5. Here are the steps we took. You're now ready to take certain steps. And when I got sober in the mid-70s, the steps, we have evolved into kind of that knee-to-knee big book sharing. That wasn't what they were doing, at least in my area of Minneapolis, where I got sober. It was hand you the book, read it, and we'll talk about it. So I did my best. I went through the steps, I did that inventory, I looked at those defects, I made the amends best I could, began a relationship with a higher power, and I did the best that I could. And then I moved to Atlanta about 2 weeks before I was going to turn 4 years. I got a home group locked in, a sponsor locked in, took that 4-year cake, and my brain said, hey, you know what, you know something now. You're 4 years sober. I don't know why that was some magic number, but it wasn't. I assure you, if you're 4 years sober and think you know everything, check with your sponsor. They'll probably disagree with you. And so I made the decision and did not check with my very experienced sponsor that, 7 meetings a week, which is what I'd been going to, that's a lot of meetings. I'm going to get me some balance in my life. And I about balanced myself out of AA is what I did. And I don't know what balance looks like. I gave up getting balance in my life decades ago. It's not for me, because not everything gets evenness. Some things are going to need more attention, and then it's something else later on, so I don't worry about getting balance in my life anymore. And so I made the decision to go to 2 or 3 meetings a week, which quickly became 2. I told you I'm fundamentally lazy, and became 2. And I started going from member to attender. And pretty soon, my spiritual space would go to visitor. I was 6 years sober, and I had a severe case of untreated alcoholism. And I came up with a plan that that people, places, and things would make me happy. Now, that's code for men, money, and mansions are going to make me happy. So I'm on a mission. And I meet a couple little fellows. They're at this 2 different times, but the same scenario happened. We do this, we meet this, they have all the requirements materially that I need and want. I'm sure I'll fall in love with them eventually, but let's get the priorities in place. And we dated I think we dated for about 3 months in my own mind, and they both married somebody else. And at 6.9 years of sobriety, I came crashing into the rooms of AA. Now, mind you, I've never stopped coming into the meeting, but I might as well have been sitting in the parking lot for all I was getting out of it, because I was checking my watch, when can I get out of here, that kind of thing, go meet him, all this. And what happened is that I recommitted myself to Alcoholics Anonymous that night. There's this story in our literature about a fork in the road: either accept spiritual help or go on to the bitter end. And I accepted the spiritual help. And I recommitted myself to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I took those steps again as if I'd never seen them before. I read our big book as if I'd never read it before. I needed a new vision new view of this. I read our 12 and 12 as if I'd never read it before. And when I got to 12, it doesn't say to me, start over again and do more analysis. It says, hey, you've had a spiritual awakening. Time for you to help someone else on that. And when I think about step 12 these days, a few weeks ago I was at a meeting, and the guy was very nervous reading how it works. And he said, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this mess to alcoholics. Sometimes it might look like the mess. I was a mess at that time, I'll tell you. And so the steps have given me a way of life worth living. And I love passing those on and watch people share and grow and change, watch the walking dead come to life. They said those traditions, those aren't just for the group. You need to know how they apply at the group level, but also, why don't you see how you can apply them in your personal life? And when I began to apply these 12 points in my personal life, I began to have grown-up relationships, adult relationships. I never thought about anybody but me. Our common welfare comes first? No. My welfare comes first. Group conscience, it's what I want to do. You're more than welcome to self-support me. That's totally fine. I've got an opinion. Just ask me. Nobody ever does, but I've got an opinion ready for you. I'll give you that unsolicited advice. And so learning about the 12 traditions in a personal way, wow. Boy, these are the best tools I know of for me. They said, be of service. Like I said, they always meant service you do in your home group, not an option. Not an option. It was the stuff you do outside. And I think probably the favorite story I like to tell on myself was there was one day, and this is pre-COVID where all the meetings are in person, and I got a call, would you come and speak at this Friday 6:30 a.m. meeting? Who goes to meetings at 6:30 in the morning? My God, I used to get home about 6:30, you know? And that's really early. I might be up, but I am not camera ready, let me tell you. This takes focus. I don't wake up like this. You got to pay attention. You got to have some coffee on board. You got to be, with alert. And I said yes, and then I immediately began to think, how can I get out of it? And there would be these two voices. Well, maybe I'll fall down the day before. No, you're not going to fall down. Maybe I'll get the flu the day before. No, you're not going to get the flu. And so they would be going back and forth with these made-up excuses. And finally, from somewhere, because, we're down to two voices now. And then there's this referee that comes up the center of my world and says, let me make sure I got this right. You're saying that someone has wanted you to share your experience, strength, and hope at 6:30 a.m. on a Friday, and you're whining because it's inconvenient. Do I have that right? Yeah. Okay. Let's flip that coin over. If I told you this is where the booze and the boys were going to be, would that have been inconvenient? Oh, God, no. I'd have been there at 6 o'clock. Where are they, They're late. And that silly little analogy reminded me that I don't ever one time remember saying no to go out and ripping and roaring and drinking and dying. Not once. It was always, you bet I'll be there. There was a rumor, there was a party going on an hour and a half away. Let's go. We don't even know who they are. We don't need to. We'll just make the party. And yet I'm whining about having to share my way of life with someone who might want to listen to it. So it really helped me a great deal to put it in a new perspective. And the last thing they said was carry the message. Everyone in this room has a message to carry. And I don't think there's a better message than the one they shared with me. So to just recap what they said, a sobriety date that's honest, and you know if yours is honest. You know. A home group you're an active member in. Would anybody notice if you weren't at your home group? That I have a sponsor, and we often say, who knows they're my sponsor? That means we're on regular communications. That you've taken the steps. Build your foundation. Learn how to apply the traditions, not just at the group, but in all of my affairs. Be sensitive to opportunities of service and carry your message to the alcoholic who still suffers. You know, I want to thank you all for being here tonight and for inviting me to No Reservations. May you be blessed.